Hello, everyone, and welcome to Answer the Call. We just watched an Ashes of Creation video, and it was about um, these freeholds, which are like player-owned housing, but that also allow you to have the best crafting mechanics in the game. They're incredibly hard to get, apparently, and they're not going to be easy to get for everybody. And at least that's what players thought, and they were not happy about it, right? And it makes me think, like, for someone who really wants to play MMOs and put time into them and dedicate my whatever free time I do have to a game like Ashes of Creation or to a game like Star Citizen. Obviously, my free time's a little bit different as a content creator, so there is going to be some bias here or skew or whatever, right? But let's talk, try to talk in games in general, maybe a little bit more than just Star Citizen, because I would like to play Ashes of Creation too, but my job is to make content for Star Citizen still, right? So how am I going to have enough time to enjoy Ashes, even though it sounds like it has some fairly hardcore MMO mechanics, like these freeholds? But I love the idea. So there was a lot of talk about like catering to casual players versus not, and how that works, and is that good? And I decided that maybe we should have a discussion about it around Star Citizen because, well, yeah, this is really hard. What do you do to, because like your largest player base in Star Citizen is going to be casual players because it is in every game, and your smallest player base is going to be hardcore players, but everybody should want to, in my mind, want to progress their character or work towards something. And how I always looked at really hardcore, difficult to achieve feats in MMOs was we all have the opportunity to get it, right? It's not this thing that is, well, if I pay more money, I will get to this thing. It's all done within, maybe it would take the hardcore player a week to do, or 2 weeks to do, or a month to do. And it would take the casual player a few months, or 6 months, or a year to do. Like within that period of time, in MMOs that I've joined, you join in, you maybe have an hour, 2 hours to play, you work towards that goal. You never actually achieve anything in that play session, but you're continuously working towards the more difficult achievements, like leveling your character or working towards like whatever this freehold thing might be. And I do feel that those type of mechanics should exist in Star Citizen. What I don't think should exist is that those are the only things, or that's the only way maybe to achieve them or whatever, right? I don't really know what the answer is. I'm not a game developer. I don't know game design. I don't know what's good necessarily and what's bad. I can only speak from my experiences. And older MMOs where leveling your character took years in some cases for me, because I was a kid and I was in school and I was playing baseball. So very similar to the space dads that have, just, a couple kids, a dog and a wife, and don't have time. I still dedicated my 1 to 2 hours a night, and I eventually hit my goals that I was trying to achieve. It just took a long time, but I enjoyed the experience that I was having in the game, and maybe it was because it was my first ever MMO or something like that, but I enjoyed the experience of leveling the character. And maybe that's what modern MMOs or a lot of games have morphed into today, is the leveling experience is something you want to get rid of instantly, and then go to whatever end game is, and then you get bored because the developers can't keep up with the end game content enough for players to stay engaged. I don't know what the answer is, and that's kind of why I wanted to have this show, is just hear what people have to say, right? And how they feel about these subjects. I adamantly hate that players are able to buy spaceships, because that was a great progression path that could have taken a lot of time. I adamantly hate that they're now able to buy armor. I don't think swiping your credit card is ever going to be the answer towards a good video game or a good video game experience. That is, the game is being built in a way to force you to want to buy those things. That's not good either, right? So it's this is so difficult. And in a lot of ways, I don't think Star Citizen is going to be able to recover from some of this possibly, but we still have reputation. We still have, one of the most gut wrenching things was hearing that players won't be able to own space stations. The only thing I'm holding on to is that they mean Lagrange point stations, and that maybe we are able to make our own smaller versions, maybe like smaller than PO or something like that, that's manufacturing and a base for your guild or whatever. Because even looking at the Drake Kraken or whatever, it's not big enough for a guild to be there and like a large org, right? So there's got to be that next step for those type of players. And what is it? Yeah, like there's so many question marks around Star Citizen that you don't know what org mechanics look like. You don't know what FPS mechanics even look like. You don't know what ship mechanics still look like, right? Like what are we going to do in these games? Some of it in my mind has to be hardcore. Some of it has to be very casual. And I think that Star Citizen has a unique opportunity on like focusing on the sandbox aspects of the game, that even when you hit endgame, you have more tools in your chest to keep the game alive for yourself. But there's also what progression systems are they going to put in, and what do players want and why? I think leveling in games can be kind of frustrating and annoying these days, but I do think making a way to make content more repeatable and more enjoyable. And, people are still playing DayZ and Rust to this day, and that is incredibly repeatable content. It's like the same thing over and over again, but the experiences are always slightly different because those experiences are based on interactions with other real players, right? And I think that that's where Star Citizen has a really good opportunity to thrive. And I don't know. I feel really shitty after watching the video and having discussions with people that like Star Citizen may never be good. And then I have other moments where I'm like, it has a really good opportunity to be great. So anyway, with that said, let's jump in and immediately start talking to some callers. So let me pull down Hellhawk. Oh, it was a little delayed there. Hellhawk, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Let me turn you up. You're pretty quiet. And yeah, what do you have to say on this subject? How do you feel?
Well, I feel like I prefer a more hardcore game personally if I'm really gonna
I
spend
do
any time in
too,
something. Yeah. I
because
think go
I
ahead.
just personally just want any game that's not hardcore. I feel like you play for a year and or less, and then you put it down.
Right.
Does that make sense? But that's I wish I said that earlier. But go ahead.
No, that makes sense. And a lot of games like I keep making the comparison to Eve because I played Eve for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And what got you into Eve is the ability to own and share ownership of a sector or, your stations and all that stuff. I
How difficult is that to do in that? I'm not an Eve player, so I'm not really sure.
if you wanted to, you could throw one together
Mm-hmm.
by yourself, but then you got to maintain it, and that's the difficult part. Is
Yeah,
if
so you
you're,
can do it, but it's gonna get killed. It's gonna get blown
yep.
up. Okay.
In fact, that's what happened to me. I solo built my own thing, had a couple, small friends grouped together, put up
Mm-hmm.
a small station. We did some fun stuff for like 4 or 5 months. We stepped away, came back, everything was gone.
Sure. What
And
allowed you to maintain it during those 4 or 5 months with a small group?
we all had our separate tasks we had to complete, and we had to finish them. Like,
So that makes it so it's not destroyable.
right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So and that's the thing with it does need to have something that attracts casual players. That's going to be the main piece of your your base. But if you don't have any of the hardcore features, no, like you said, no one's going to play it for more than a couple months. They're going to go on to something else. And
Yeah.
if you look at how Star Citizen is mentioned, like the Ashes of Creation video you watched earlier, they're
Yeah.
talking about different housing system. I think Star Citizen's already addressed that because you got ownable apartments they're talking about.
You got your
But
own
then you also
bases that you could build. Yeah.
But here's the thing. I still believe that if you're a casual player and you want to build a base, sure, you can build a base, but you shouldn't be able to have the same functionality or the same size of base as an entire org that's putting things together. Like
Yeah.
there needs to be some sort of sync to keep you playing the game and make it more difficult and give you some feeling of accomplishment once you have that.
Sure, and we've
And
talked about this a little bit around org mechanics, I think, in the past on the show. And how I view org mechanics is, if you want to experience the things that larger orgs have, like, I know they said we can't own stations or whatever. Let's say that does happen, and that is the org endgame. I don't know what it will be, but that's the most logical one to me, right? Is a big org would maintain some big station, and it would be a cool thing, right? And that a lot of people would want to do that. What do? You join that org, right?
Mhm.
And the because sure, the owner at the top of the org is going to feel like they own it, but in reality it's all because of all the work that's being done by everybody. And I'm very comfortable being a small cog in a big wheel and being happy with those things. And that's just sort of my perspective on it. But how do you feel about that? Is, like, I wasn't sure where you were going with it necessarily, because, like, you were saying that small player shouldn't be able to experience what a big org can, but in my mind you can, but you just need to accept that it's a team effort and not a me effort, right?
right, you can't do it solo. That's the
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
The opportunity is there for you. If that's not the type of gameplay you like, that's fine, but that's your
Hmm.
decision. And the thing is, the one
This is
Star
tough,
Citizen's
right?
it's tough because Star Citizens kind of pigeonhole themselves.
Yep.
So items and ships, you can't do progression because everyone owns the shit. There may be a glimmer of hope there if they keep the original concept for the Bengal, where the Bengal is, there's 4 of them floating out in the universe, and you got to go repair them and restore them, and
Yep.
that's how you get the game, or the ship and game. But there's nothing else in the game that is really hardcore. Like, think about,
That we know of.
and that we know of. Okay, that's
Yeah.
fair. But let's look at like exploration. Or if Star Citizen was focusing on building mechanics to get us the information we need to interact with the universe, we would already have exploration gameplay.
Yeah.
But instead, we have the mission teams cranking out, well, we don't have to scan anything down, here's the location. Or you can't sell this, or
Man,
buy and sell this. It's
I was
super
just talking
frustrating.
about I wasn't talking about this. I was just thinking about this, and I never shared this with the stream or anything. How how nice would it be? Like, here's an example of this kind of hardcore versus very casual. Right now, I think the experience in Star Citizen, as far as the map goes, very casual, right? But how
Yep.
nice would it be to go through progression systems, through missions that unlock those locations for you? What if
And,
you were forced to do those missions to know where those locations were? Like, why should you log into the game for the first time in Star Citizen and just have a wealth of knowledge around about everything that's around you, except for like a few caves and, like one or two like drug labs or whatever?
so I feel like that's a fair point as far as certain locations, but I do believe that some of this stuff should not be available unless, again, just from an exploration point of view, unless you've purchased the data to figure out how to get to a place.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, purchase the data, or earned it in a mission
Or
or
earned it.
something. Yeah.
Right. Something happens where that was not available until you did something. Ugh.
Somebody in chat
This
said, can they share it? That's a good question too. You would think it would be shareable, right? That info.
what would the way I'm thinking of it is like, go to
Would you
this
want
orbital
to?
marker. Like I would want to. I liked it when. Do you remember when Grimhex wasn't on the map?
It was great.
Yeah, and when like Ghost Hollow wasn't on the map. Now it's just pick up a mission. It shows you exactly where it is. It's like they're kind of devaluing a lot of the content they're making because there's no challenge. It's all there for everyone, and that
Yeah.
is one of the biggest failures of what we have now. And think about it. Even the way that they describe Quanta, it's so damn casual. We have almost no ability to influence the way the economy works, 'cause Quanta automatically fixes whatever, it goes in and auto balances essentially the entire economy.
Yeah.
So I think that I understand Star Citizen is trying to go more casual because that's the majority of the player base. That's how they get people to buy the ships. But I'm slowly seeing them water it down to the point where hardcore gaming is basically not going to exist by the time it releases, unless they make certain changes.
Yeah, and the
So
thing is I don't feel the same doom and gloom as you might, because I don't know, like when you look at the mining mechanics with crafting in mind and how some things are over here and some things aren't, and hey, you need this ship and these only in-game purchasable tools, modules, things like that in order to do stuff. It feels like they're going in the right direction on some things, and then their monetization makes you feel like they're not, and then they don't talk about like what the general gameplay is intended to be like. It's
right,
so hard. We all have our
yeah,
own idea of what the game is. Everybody's is different.
yeah. I think though from what I've seen, the how they handle manufacturing is going to play a major role
I agree.
in how the end game looks. And to be honest, as soon as they mentioned that there was going to be a ship that's a manufacturing ship,
It's over.
I lost faith in the system.
Yep.
So that's where I'm kind of coming from, and I think really the only thing that's left that there's kind of a hardcore component to is combat,
And that's sad
because
because
it's
hardcore in
awful.
MMOs doesn't have to be combat.
Oh,
Like in my mind, hardcore could be a very difficult skill to level, a a hard raid, to achieve, and it's just I don't
well,
know.
even for economy gameplay, hardcore could be I can get this from this place to that place at the cheapest possible in the fastest amount of time. Like there's different things they could do. Like I still believe that they could have a hardcore economy gameplay set up if they make it so Quanta doesn't go into certain sectors, and those are completely player based. From what I've seen, in order for there to be a hardcore following to an MMO, you have to have players have control of something. And
Yeah.
I really hope they put it together. I'm nervous based on what we've been seeing.
And to talk about emergent gameplay and to talk about all these things and share them as such a core aspect of the game, and taking control completely away from the players in so many scenarios, in literally every scenario right now,
Mm-hmm.
that we're aware of, it's not very exciting. I have to agree.
Right. And
Yeah.
I actually think just something as simple as Jump Town, to me that kind of got ruined as soon as it became a mechanic. Like the
Really?
fact that
I still think it's great, actually, but I think it's great for what it is. Um, but what they should look at is how do you make it like, have you heard what they're doing with Security Post Korea? I feel like they're listening a little bit. Do you know what's happening there?
I must have missed that.
Okay, so in the most recent monthly report, they're first off they're letting you know if the player that you're looking for the mission is inside or outside, so that makes it a little bit easier. Okay, but
Okay.
then another thing that they're doing that I think fits a little bit more on the owning or controlling something is you can destroy the turrets or be in control of turning the turrets off. So now the station
Hmm.
is yours. You can land your own ballista. You can land your own, turrets or ships or whatever, and become the station if you want to, for a period of time. I guess is it sounding like what they want to do,
Hmm.
and the I it's not what you're asking for, but
Right.
it's making a situation like, but the problem is it's not Jump Town. It's not this place that everyone's like drawn to because they're hoping to get as much action at that location as possible in whatever way. Um,
See
but
what they're doing
they
with
could take that
SPK.
and do it with Jump Town, and it would be really successful, I think.
What they are doing with SPK is actually what I was hoping that they would end up doing with Ninetales. Because
Yeah.
Ninetales was a
Ninetales be
trash
in control
setup.
of the station, right?
Yes. And not only that, allow someone, again, this goes into MMOs and like hardcore gameplay, reputation's got to be in there somewhere.
Yeah.
If you have Ninetales rep, you're allowed to fight on the side of Ninetales and get Ninetale shit. And then there's different phases. So you have to get the cargo to the station, and then you have to board the station and assault the station. Like, there's so much they could have done, and I just... Well, we'll see what they end up doing. Again, sadly, it's too early to say, obviously, because half the shit's not in the game yet. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well,
I mean, that's really the big thing here is it's so I don't know, because you know that you want a good healthy player base is, consists of casual players, right? That play, regularly, but maybe not that long, and many of them. And then you still need to cater for people that, like, here's the deal. I don't know how many hours a day I'm going to play Star Citizen. I don't know if I'm going to play it at all still, because I don't know anything about the game yet. And I'm trying to learn and share what I love about games and see how that maybe can be applied to Star Citizen. That's been the whole basis of this channel, not being miserable and not being salty. It's always been, what do I love about games and how do we apply that to Star Citizen? And a lot of people don't really recognize that. But yeah, the I don't off. Yeah, right. I don't know. It's just it's so hard because you know that everything you've seen works against what you love about MMOs.
Right. And the two last things I'll throw out there, having them come out and say they haven't even thought about how they're going to be doing the salvage gameplay aside from scraping is a big kick in the nuts, because I feel like...
Did they say that? Yeah.
Yeah. What was the it was that Bar Citizen in Singapore or something. It was in that thing.
Don't listen to any of that shit. I'm sorry.
Well, I hope to Christ that it's not right, because if that's still in concept and this is your 30,000, that's like the hardcore version of salvage now. But I hope that it has some mechanics that make it difficult and something you have to learn. And it's the same thing for mining in like the Orion. When we get to the bigger shit, there better be something different about it that sets it apart and makes it more difficult. Mm-hmm. Because if the ship is no longer the progression, it's got to be the skill to actually do the gameplay mechanic.
To achieve something, yeah.
Right.
And what are we achieving?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, that's all I had for you today.
No problem. Hell, yeah, I'm depressed.
Sorry.
No, it's just, it is what it is. I just don't know, but we don't know how this game's going to end up. But hopefully it's okay.
All right, man. Well, enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
All right, man. Be good. Let's put you. All right, he backed out, and let's go here while I get our next caller together. But yeah, just on his points, it's tough because I know what I love about games, and I know that I love actual achievements that are hard to get. And usually what makes it hard to get is it takes time to get there, right? But I think that's what other players don't like about things, is that it takes time to get there because they feel like they'll never achieve them. But I think it's a matter of maybe, I don't know. I don't know. I think hardcore players need to accept that some mechanics need to be more casual, and I think some casual players need to accept that some mechanics need to be hardcore, And that's where I kind of feel on the subject, is people need to accept that maybe this aspect of the game won't be necessarily for you. Yeah, Primal, there are. So yeah, I don't know. That's just where I'm at right now at the moment. But let's go for our next caller, Space Monkey Business. Hey, Space, are you there?
I'm there. Hey.
Hello.
You hear me?
I hear you loud and clear.
That's good. How are you doing?
I'm good.
It's been a while.
It has. So what are you feeling about this? Are you as sad as I am, or just unsure?
To be honest, I have the advantage compared to you that I can make breaks because my job is different. Your job is following the game.
This game, yes, but I'm really speaking in more general terms of like, I
Yeah.
don't feel that I have to play. Listen, I can go back to dealing poker. I can go back to doing whatever. I will be happy. But for me, I still yearn for that game. So like, if
Yeah.
that game is not Star Citizen, I will still keep looking for that
Yeah,
game.
sure.
You know?
There are a lot of games out there. Why not
Exactly.
watch them? But back to Star Citizen. I think the first question is endgame for whom? I mean, there's a lot of opportunities to cater out some gameplay for like solo players, for like groups, which maybe look a little bit like a dungeon of a classic MMO.
Yeah, like a
And if
smaller
you,
group, right? Like
yeah,
5 or
exactly.
so. Yeah.
Let's like in New World, it's like the smaller dungeon where it's just like, okay, I need a couple of people, but I don't need to organize a group of 40 people that do a WoW dungeon or something. So that would be crazy. That would be like orc gameplay at the end, if something exists. But I think to define it, we need a lot more information. I think the first thing you really need is you need a progression system. Because since there won't be any skills, or at least not as strong as skills like in classic MMOs, you need to have like some path of progression. And this can be due to ships, which is like a little bit tricky now, since you already mentioned
just a little bit. Yeah.
I have one idea, but I don't know if it's feasible. That
What do you
if
think?
the moment you buy a ship, you still need to get through a path of progression to get a certain reputation to activate the ship, even though you might need to,
like a licensing system, right, of some kind.
Something like that, where the other player who has not bought the ship needs to buy the ship with in-game currency in addition. So that would stop everybody running around at the first day with their big ships because they need to go through some kind of progression. Even if they would be faster than the others.
I like that idea, but the amount of rage inducing that would happen with the people who spend thousands of dollars. No, I agree. I like the idea, but I think people would spend thousands of dollars and not be able to fly their ship. They would lose their minds.
Well, maybe they can even try it out. I mean, it's in the beta, and the beta is for something like this. You can try it out and see how the people react. And if there are a lot of people who say, this is fucked up, I want to play my ship now, just roll it back. But at least you try to balance it in some way. But,
Space, they get mad when they have to wait 10 minutes for their ship.
Yeah. I know. There are a lot of things to solve that issue of the waiting game.
I feel like part of the things that need to be solved, though, is like the player's mentality of entitlement a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like, here's the thing. Like, I agree with you, but I just look at this as like, how will players react to it, and will CIG cave or not? And I don't know. That one's tough. I like the idea. I always like that. Where I liked that system the most was like a Gran Turismo. Like, I couldn't race the fastest cars. I had a piece of crap car kind of at the beginning, and then you work your licensings up, and then you get cooler cars, but you're earning money towards that car while you're getting the licensing, right? While you're getting better.
But maybe it also rises and falls with the amount of time you have to invest into getting your ship. If it's like months, the people will rage. If it's like maybe a week, or maybe even less. I mean, I played Diablo 4 and I saw people after 3 days or 4 days at level 100 where I say, okay, those are the hardcore gamers, they can do it. But hey, it's beta, you have to find one solution for that. If you want to be attractable to like a wider audience who's not invested in the game right now. And it's also, I mean, first of all, the size, the player or the group size. Another thing would be like the career. I mean, the fighter, the pirate, the industrial player. What kind of progression paths you have in mind? The thing is, they are in what I would call an asset phase. They create a lot of assets, like the planets and all the stuff. And then eventually, hopefully, they come to a phase where it's like, okay, this is maybe the gameplay scenario phase. the thing is,
How many years is each phase space? Oh, no.
I don't know.
Oh, no.
But but the big issue is maybe that I don't know if they ever thought about this gameplay scenario discussion, because normally that's what I would assume is if I develop a project, I have a clear vision that might change left and right. Yeah, that's the issue of development. But I have a clearer vision of what scenarios the players could end up in. So
Yeah.
I never heard any discussions about that, especially not about endgame or a progression path from them. So that's
They are. I swear they are purposefully vague, so you have the most grand idea in your head, and you buy their stupid spaceships. Like at this point, I am convinced that is the case because I've never seen a game launch that tells you nothing about what you can do ever.
Yeah.
Even Starfield went through and was somewhat vague still, but not to that extent. Ashes of Creation, like the video that kind of spawned this topic, very clear on what their goals are, very clear. And obviously they might shift a little bit here and there, but very clear on what they want in their game, and that's what players are excited about, is what they want in the game.
But the thing is, you basically not 100%, but you know what you get when you're buying a Bethesda game, even if it's just in space now.
Yeah.
They have experience with that shit. They know what works and what doesn't. And the issue of CIG is they might have experience in developing games, but maybe not in a MMO or even in that direction. So maybe also look at other MMOs, what works best in them. Like look at WoW, what works really good at that. Look at EVE for like the org gameplay or the economy. I never played it, but I heard the Final Fantasy XIV has also really wide player base because they did something right. What? I don't know. I watched the video, but I forgot what the content was in. But hey, look at the ones who do it right and copy from them. Not like doing the mistakes of the third person looting. But I don't want to start it now. You will rage if I go in that.
Third person
but here's
looting.
The thing. Here's the thing. I think Star Citizen has a really big advantage if it comes to the idea of it, because since you don't have a skill system, you have scenarios like maybe a big org battle scenario or whatever, where new players, since there are no skill systems, can jump in. And I think that's the biggest advantage Star Citizen has over the others. Just jump in. You don't need to level to 100 to participate. Just you need a friend who's already there, and then you can jump right in, depending on how big the skill system is. Obviously.
Yeah, that's true. It's like a very I guess like to use your Diablo example, I think that's one of the wins that Diablo had, right? Is if you were level 100 and I was level, I think 40 like I am, we could still play together, and there's no negative really effects for the two of us. And in this case, it's not as simple as that. Whereas like, let's say you have a really big ship, who cares, doesn't matter, Idris, something like that. I am able to crew your Idris, but I still need to learn the game mechanics a little bit and understand how to shoot, where to shoot, what to shoot. And through that process, I'll probably learn it a lot easier and quicker too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there might be a scenario where you just jump in and say, hey, since you don't know the game, you know how to shoot. Here's a turret, jump in, do your work. And then it could be interesting because the hardcore stuff comes from the game, from the skill, not from the progression, or not mostly about it. So it means when let's say you have this big capital ship, and the scenario is you jump somewhere, you need to defend yourself. And the skill or the hardcore comes from the players who play that know what to shoot first, or how to communicate well to achieve the goal, because there are a lot of waves of enemies. And then you have the bombers, and then somebody needs to spot them and tell the people, oh, shoot here, because they are bombers, they are more dangerous for our vessel. And if you don't shoot it down, we will die.
Sounds like an actually working Xeno threat.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with that. and that the cool thing is that can be casual, just as available to a casual player. They just
Yeah.
the thing about casual players, and I think Star Citizen, is that they're going to need to accept
Mhm.
that they may not own the ship, they may not own the station, it may not be theirs, but they can participate in it in many
Yeah, exactly.
ways. And I don't think they're the problem is I don't think they're willing to, from this perspective that I've seen, and I am only hearing Spectrum.
Mm.
um
Spectrum.
and those guys are another level of whatever, but the, like, the Vandal mask, like, where is that on the spectrum of hardcore versus
Yeah.
casual, and
Mm.
like the idea behind having to kill 50 players, that was a PvP centric mission. You remember all the icons they showed
Yeah, yeah.
way
There are a
back
lot
about all
of
the
icons.
yeah, there was like all the icons of like careers you can go down. Like, to
Yeah.
think that you might not, what I hope is maybe that people will find their long-term progression paths within those, and they won't care as much about, like, what was wrong with the Vandal mask. It was the only thing.
Yeah.
I think
That was
it was
just a
it was its
tryout.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it was that they'd never done anything like that before. It was the first thing that you can earn in
Yeah.
game that you couldn't buy, but it was the only thing, right? There was just one other, and it's not like there was hundreds of versions of this going on around the game, like might
Mhm.
happen with these, different reputation systems, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if it comes down to a statement from Mr. CIG, Chris,
I don't
who
I don't
said he
believe anything he
wants.
says
No, no,
anymore.
no. Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's very hard to believe, but I remember one statement that always comes in mind with this discussions like, hey, once server meshing and 4.0 is out, the gates of content will open. It's like, I will believe it when I see it.
I'll believe it when I see it. Exactly. And it's, I'll go back to a statement around something
Yeah.
like this, which was, I argued that we should have unique paints for people who earn ships in the game versus people
Yeah.
buy them on the website. So you can look at that player and go, I know they earned it. Wow, what an achievement. And then
Mm.
that inspires you to want to play the game more to try to achieve the same thing. That is very much an MMO thing.
You can even go further than just paints, like those, those World War II fighters with their like badges and their stamps on it, how many enemies they killed. Maybe you
Sure.
also get that when you do like when you progress your path through a reputation system like mining or something. You get badges,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah,
put it
instead
on
of a
your.
forum badge, a real in-game one.
Yeah, yeah. There's
Mm.
a lot of opportunity to it. I have two more points, and then you can go on to the next one. One issue I tried out on Spectrum Post and thought I would get a lot of slack, but it was mostly slack, but not so much. It was interesting about leaderboards, because I
Okay.
had the hey, what happens when you, or how could you motivate players to play more? Could leaderboards be an opportunity, like the bounty hunter of the month, or like I mean, for racing for sure.
Yeah,
Everybody.
that's what I was about to say. The last time I
Yeah,
cared about a leaderboard was with racing, and it worked for me. I was so happy to see that I was in the top 20.
yeah. For racing, nobody said it again. Everybody understands there needs to be a leaderboard for racing.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is, can you go further than that? Like the miner of the month, the miner of the week, like a progression system that maybe can also reset if it's just for a month, that could motivate players more. Because I played a lot of Dota 2.
Okay.
And I've the most. I mean, it's a game with endless opportunities and scenarios you can play through. That's why it's so motivating. It's like a team game, and a lot of players play it for like the MMR and the ranking system. The moment you go higher, higher ranks, the games get more difficult, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing: could you translate that from that kind of game into Star Citizen in some way, and don't lose players? Because you could say, okay, if you are
Probably not, right?
high in the leaderboard, you get maybe like a little badge, something really, really small that you can achieve, but don't make it too hard, and don't make it that you have to contribute in that to get like gameplay advantages. Maybe just like visuals or something you can earn in leaderboards. Something small. And the last thing is about the space stations and not being able to buy them. I think at some point when they find out how to sell you a space claim, they will get it in.
I hope so. I want that so bad.
Yeah, it would be interesting. But maybe it's also similar to what was the name?
Hellhawk.
Hellhawk said. About the bangle, where you say, okay, this is nothing you can earn or can build. Maybe it's also something you can like conquer and have to defend. And then while you are in it, you can modify it and build it out to make it more defensible, whatever.
Yeah, group play.
But until the Star Citizen convention, the thing we can just assume that something will happen. I think there are big things, big changes, because I follow a bit the progress tracker.
Okay.
And what you've not seen is any change in the chapters over the last, I don't know, 6 weeks. That means since they don't extend them, they're closer to the end, or that's what at least my assumption is.
Okay.
And that's a good thing to maybe hope that Squadron 42 ends and maybe goes into QA phase and comes out next year. And the main question is then, the question of all questions, does Chris shift the resources to Star Citizen? And if not, Reddit burns, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, can you even shift a lot of the resources towards Star Citizen until we have meshing, right? I don't know.
Well, at least
We'll
you can
find
shift
out.
those resources who created all the assets, like the planets and space stations and so on.
Sure, so we'll get more assets, but
yeah, which is bad. But they're actually, I looked at the job openings and they're searching for gameplay people, so they know they have some issue there. But hey, I will stop here. The other one was waiting. I said 2 questions and I overshot it, so sorry about that.
It's all good. It was a good conversation. So thank you, Space, and I hope you you have a great weekend, rest of your weekend.
You too.
Yeah, man.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, before we get to the next caller, I don't normally do this, but I actually want to address something from a viewer in the Twitch chat that I think really is a good example of my mindset around the problems with casual players and the feeling of entitlement in a video game. Why do all people think that they deserve the same spot in the NHL or insert, major sports league here versus in real life, which is not attainable for everybody, right? And most people are just happy to play games with their friends and in the league. Like, I'm gonna go play I'm 38 years old. I'm gonna go play in an over 50 league to play, because a lot of the guys I played with for the last decade are 10 to 15 years older than me. And they invited me to come play with them, and they explained that it's super casual, it's no penalties, it's just we're there to like pass the puck around, get a sweat out, and have a good time. And I'm so excited to go because it's fun. What happened to that? What happened to the feeling like I need to like hoist the Stanley Cup every time I play the video game? We don't need that. You just need to they need to make games that are fun on a regular basis. And there are those achievements for the people who are willing to put the work in for them and earn them and deserve them, like in these leagues. I think that's a good comparison to make, in my opinion. Let me know if you guys think that that's the case. But no, and I'm not going to beat up on all the seniors. All those guys are better hockey players than I am. It's just to go hang out with my friends. Just my friends happen to be a little older than me sometimes. But yeah, it's that's just how I look at it. It's not necessarily about competitiveness, but there's difficult achievements, and then there's that takes like some work and is fun because you achieve them, and then there's fun, right? And that's kind of what I think would be great. So with that said, let's move to our next caller. Gillian, can you hear me?
Hello, yeah.
All right, I hear you as well.
Okay.
So how do you How do you feel about all
I'm
this?
good. I'm a bit skeptic. I'm a bit, nervous about the future of Star Citizen and
I think
what
we all are.
of. I'm myself is a call it a hardcore player, competitive player, especially in Arena Commander and Battle Royale and all that. That's what I like. And I think what Star Citizen need and what all full loot MMOs need, because I think there's a difference between a regular MMO and a full loot MMO in the aspect of what you should achieve and how you should achieve it.
Yeah.
Where Star Citizen, I'm looking at it as a full loot MMO, and there should be skill to the different mechanics and professions. Like there should be skill to combat. There should also be skill to mining, trading, salvaging, medical gameplay, piracy, all this kind of stuff. Where I'm a hardcore player on combat, I will not necessarily be able to do mining as well as you are, because I know you like mining, right? And there should be a skill to that. And I'm not gonna complain and ask CIG to lower that skill level because I'm not willing to put my time into mining. I'm willing to do it on the combat, but I'm not willing to do it on the mining because it doesn't interest me as much.
Yeah, and for me, it doesn't even have to be like a skillful thing. It's just like a choice. Like these are the type of game mechanics that I enjoy. Okay, well, mining is more of that like resource gathering and crafting stuff. That's what I've always enjoyed in MMOs. And then honestly, when I get bored of that, that's when I start being like a hardcore murder hobo in the game. And it usually, in the MMOs that I've played, it's taken me years to get there typically.
Yep.
Or a year with like Albion. Like I think I played Albion for a year. All I did was craft and all that stuff, and then all I wanted to do was like the PvP shit. And
that game was rough. Like I did a lot of PvP in that, and it turned into a Zerg fest. Like numbers just win in that game, right?
Sort of. So, I mean, not when the 5v5s matter and stuff like that. There's.
Oh, but I played it a lot, right? Also 5v5 and these new corrupt dungeons when they came out, like 1v1 dungeons where you could like invade each other dungeons and stuff. And it was really cool. It worked really nice until people figured out what builds does better, and then the balancing, because you have to balance a 1v1 scenario, but you also have to balance a 5v5 scenario and a Zerg with Zerg scenario in the same builds, right? And it's very few games that does that right. And for me, Albion didn't do that right. Like the 1v1 was too cheesy, and it kind of threw me off.
Gotcha.
So, but I hope the Star Citizen is not gonna suffer from that same disease, I'll call it. Especially right now, we're waiting for the new flight mechanics, right? And my concern is that they are lowering the skill level so much that it would be possible for a guy who plays, let's say, 1 hour a day to compete with a guy who sweats it out and plays maybe 8 hours a day. That should not like.
But that was never their intention, right? They always
I know.
So you still like the one thing that they have been very clear about with their game is with that aspect of it specifically. So if that's what it achieves, you would feel that they would fix it, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm hoping.
I'm hoping too.
Because I'm not expecting in being able to compete with you on the mining or salvaging side, because you're spending hours and hours more in that game loop than I am.
I do though. It's funny is I don't look at it that way. I think that there's some aspects of MMOs and video games that are skillful, and then there's some that are just like the skill is a little bit of game knowledge. It's not just like PvP is game knowledge and like actual physical skills of like placing your marker on.
Very complex, right?
Yeah, as much there's complex, which I look at like what you're into, and then there's less complex, which is what I'm into. And you don't want to compete with me on that level, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't if you wanted to. There's some people that can't if they wanted to in PvP games, right?
Yeah, that shouldn't be the case in my opinion. I think I should be able to go and do it, but unless I'm willing to put the time and effort into learning that mechanic, like proper mastering that mechanic, I will always be a bit behind. I don't know how you measure mining. Is it AUEC per hour, like something like that? I'll always lag a bit behind of people that really put their time into it, and that's fine. I should still be able to do it. I should still be able to, on a casual level, right? Here it comes, to go and have fun with it. But unless I'm willing to put in the time, I should not be able to. Well, I should be able to, but it's very unlikely that I'm able to compete on that level where the guys are doing it nonstop, right?
That's what I love about, where I think Star Citizen's done really well is the turrets, in my opinion, where I can join a good pilot's turret. Like I joined, if I was the pilot, we would have had a bad situation, but because Burks was the pilot, he, good pilot, I'm in the turret and, he's telling me, all right, shoot. And then we just shoot and we win and it's a good feeling. And I, as the casual, was able to participate in something I wouldn't normally have been.
Definitely. And you're able to participate. I think that's the key word, right? You're not able to compete. Let's say you have two, I don't know what ship it was. I assume it was probably Cutlasses, right? You have two Cutlasses where one crew is like absolutely sweats. Yeah, pilot is very good. The gunners have been gunning for 8 hours a day the last half year, something like that. And then you come up with a casual ship. You should not be able to compete. Like you should be hammered. Like it's that simple, right? If you're a professional football player that comes onto a local football club, he is going to be dominating. That's just how it is, and that's how it should be. But you should still be able to have fun against similar kind of players that you are, like if you know what I mean, like people that invest the same amount of time. Or some people are just skilled, some people are not. Like some people might have to invest a lot more time to get on that level. That's just humans, right? But it should be fun gameplay, but it should also be taken up to that competitiveness, I think. Otherwise, for me, the fun goes out of the game.
Sure, and I guess the difference, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but the approach that you're taking at it is less of, when I define like a hardcore MMO mechanic, it would be more of like, we don't have skills to gain, so it would be, maybe a drop rate that's incredibly low on a boss or something, or I don't know.
I mean, that's actually okay.
Yeah,
I think that
I'm just going more. I'm trying to figure out. Your perspective is more like learning the skill is what takes the
definitely.
time, right?
That's what I think of when you say hardcore game mechanics. That's like it's the skill floor and skill ceiling. The difference in between that's the upper level would obviously be hardcore, but when you come to a loot table or proper MMO mechanics like that, I have no issues in a very low drop chance. I actually like that. That that's something that you have to grind to maybe be able to get. For me, in a full loot scenario, it doesn't work very well. So I really like the skins. Like, so if you can be very lucky to maybe farm a boss or whatever, some event or something. You can be very lucky that you loot a skin. That's very special for that, and then you have that. But looting an item that will give you an advantage in the game over other players, like a significant advantage, that's not. I don't think that's good for the game.
Yeah, I think this is why survival games maybe, or some like DayZ type games have survived so long, is your experience is always different, but everyone starts at the exact same page and has the exact same opportunities.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's just
and
a matter of...
You had the same in Ultimate, right?
No, because, once the game's established, that's not as much the case. But with Ultimate, since it was a skill-based game, the idea behind it is if you hit those skill levels, you were just as good as any of the other players. It just mattered if you clicked your mouse at the right time.
You're able to be as good as least. The game was not holding you back. It was yourself that would hold you back, right?
Exactly. And I think when the game holds you back, it's not the best game.
No.
Like artificially holds you back.
Yeah,
artificial
exactly.
Scarcity of things is different, but
Yeah, but that's where the what's it called, the reputation system comes in, right? I think they really need to do that complex, and they really need to have something locked behind gates on that to
It's
have
kind of
these.
contradictory to what we both just said, though, in a way.
Yeah, but it's you have to catch the attention for both the people that like the Rust gameplay, right? Because they will think Star Citizen is cool as well. But you also have the maybe space engineers guys that like all that stuff. But you have to catch both audiences in the same game, right? So you need both, but you can't give any of those groups a significant advantage over the other.
It's going to be impossible. This game is going to be
Pretty hard.
unbalanced forever, most likely.
Oh, yes.
It's just going to be shifting balance in different directions always, but it'll probably never be right.
I don't think there's ever a game who got it right. Like there's always small tweaks and stuff that can be done, but it's just getting close, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And I think Star Citizen is doing a good job so far. I actually like the way the flight is now. I'm looking forward to see how they're doing it the other way. And also if we look away from the server performance, I actually think the game is quite nice right now. It obviously still lacks a lot of stuff, but they're doing a decent job so far compared to other games that maybe have done completely wrong in the beginning. So I think the foundation is there. It's how they decide to build on this foundation that's going to be interesting and scary at the same time.
I don't see the foundation yet. I think that's my biggest frustration. Yeah. I think maybe because you like combat, the foundation's there.
It might be that, yes, but the economics is one of the foundation pillars, right? Yeah, economics and progression is a foundation pillar in my opinion, and that we still need to see. But the way you move, the way you fly, the way you speak to other people, the way the ships, I would say, act, like the function of the ships is quite cool.
Sure. Yeah? Okay, I understand now then.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, but we're still a long way from the goal, right? And the casual players, the space stats, as we call them, right? I think it's a mentality issue. Like it's exactly like some of the other guys said that you should not be able to do everything in the game. Like you should not expect everything to be served on you on a silver plate. Like you actually have to.
The point is to play. Yes. Games are made to be played. Like what the heck? I never understood this.
Exactly. Most of the time, the journey is actually the fun part, right?
Yeah.
And you're working for a goal, but when you then reach the goal, you look back and say, okay, the journey was actually what I liked here. And I think that's why a lot of people fall off in MMOs once they reach that end game level. Like they had fun leveling, they just didn't realize it. And then when they reach the end game, it's like, what am I doing now? This is boring.
Yeah, that's how I was with No Man, or not No Man's Sky, New World. It was like,
yeah. I was hoping to see these. What was it called? Where you got outpost thingies, where you came in two teams fighting against each other, or these outposts. That would be good, but yeah, there's too many people in the map, in my opinion. I don't like the big groups that combat. I prefer like 1v1, 2v2, or 5v5 because I feel like that's where player skill really shines.
Yeah, but all right, Gillian. It sounds like we're about at the end. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, not right now. Just good luck to the AC guys and getting this flight module going. We're looking forward to it. Okay, have fun, boys.
All right, see you later.
See you.
All right,
bye.
Bye. And our next caller is Primal. Primal, can you hear me? Hello. So, how you feeling? You're going to be our last caller for the day. So, how you feeling about this subject? I know you were quite vocal in the Twitch chat while we were discussing it earlier.
Yeah, I was kind of vocal in there. So a few things is, so I'm kind of joining in kind of late-ish. So I'm just kind of going based off the title and some of the things that I heard.
Fair.
But If I'm gonna be real, dude, honestly, I feel like a lot of these backers on Spectrum, Reddit, whatever, even some people in the Twitch chat, honestly, dude, like these people do not play video games, bro. Like they don't. They don't play MMOs, they don't play games, they play Star Citizen, and that's it.
Yeah.
And their opinion on what Star Citizen should be arguably is skewed. It's skewed, and it's an L take, unfortunately. It is.
But it's also the fault of CIG for allowing them to not understand what the game is because they don't communicate it well.
Right. And I think
all.
that's a big right. And I think that's a big problem with the way CIG is communicating right now is like imagine working on a project, and again, like we don't know. I'm only speaking from what I am perceiving, right? I think perception is very different than talking in absolutes. Like I know what's actually happening. I don't. We don't. You don't. None of us know what's actually happening. We can only base our opinions of what we're seeing. And what we're seeing and what we're experiencing is something we don't know. We don't know the game's direction. 10 years in, and I can't confidently say, like, oh yeah, you want to play Star Citizen? Oh yeah, what's that game about? What's it going to be like? I don't know. You know, like it could be anything, right? And shout outs to all of us in this community, Star Citizen community, your community as a whole, having these discussions, because they're hard discussions to have when we don't have a foundation or a sphere in which we can control our opinions. You know what I mean? Like some people want it to be a sim. Some people want it to be, is it a DayZ? Is it a WoW? Is it a, you know, and it's just
Did you
out
see
there.
my tweet
And
the other day?
You don't know. I saw a bunch of them, so I don't know which one you're talking about.
This dude, some dude in the YouTube comments goes, Tony Z needs to put out, Tony Z better put out SimCity in space or I'm refunding.
Yeah,
it's like, what did you think? Where did you even get that fucking idea from?
And it's like, in that idea, now, arguably, that idea could be valid if we knew that Star Citizen was going to be a sim game. Then we could be like, okay, well, you know, like, yeah, sure. But we don't know, right? It's like we have this expectation of what it's supposed to be. We have this idea based on what they've shown us, but we don't know, like, we can't narrow it down, right? And I think that's important. So it's hard to really have these discussions. But
good luck to that guy refunding, by the way. No chance.
But yeah, so like so there's a lot of what I feel like is really L takes on what MMO should be. I think for the hardcore crowd or quote unquote hardcore, whatever, I have some notes here. I wrote down progression and hardcore mechanics need to be engaging, but also relatively achievable, because there's some things that I may disagree with you on. I do not think that it is a 2023 MMO system to have hardcore things that are just out of reach. Like, sure, back in 2004 or 2005, when you're spamming Illidan's raid in World of Warcraft to get his glaives, and you never ever got it ever. Like, but then when you got it, oh, I got it. Oh, this is so sick. Oh, I finally did it. That was an awesome nostalgic feeling in 2005. That doesn't work anymore. That's not how.
Yeah, but there's also the argument that the way MMOs are being built now don't work either.
Well, which MMOs are we talking about? Because MMOs miss. There's a lot of misses, and there's a lot of hits.
What's hit?
You know?
What's hit? And why? I guess that would be my argument. What is a 2023 MMO and why is it good?
Okay, so I feel like a 2023 MMO is I may sound kind of biased here, but okay, I'll give you examples of. I'll give you some examples
why you like a certain one. You know, that's all. There's nothing wrong with being biased. We're all biased.
So I'll give you an example of a game that I feel like is, and I'm sure you've heard about its resurgence, is Black Desert right now, right? It's an Eastern MMO, grind aside, yada, yada, yada. I'm specifically talking about the systems, right? So I personally don't feel, there's a lot of people in the Star Citizen community that want hardcore systems in Star Citizen, and they supplement that argument by saying they want things like rare items, like a rare drop, like you kill a boss in a bunker and he drops a rare helmet that's like RNG chance 0.01% or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that encourages me to go down to that bunker. But for a lot of people, and I think it's important, is if it's an item, and this is why having this discussion is hard, because if Star Citizen is going the traditional MMO route, then we can have this discussion like more in depth and narrowed down.
But we
but
don't
if it's
know.
going more, but we don't know, right? So assuming it is, or in this situation, assuming it is, that's a dated system, because nowadays people don't want to grind the same instance or dungeon or whatever and play the lotto every week.
Yeah.
Some people do, a lot of people don't. And a lot of people are the people that are, you know.
I will say that I
Okay.
don't. I agree. But there was other aspects of old MMOs that I thought were successful, like where I talked about like skill gain. We don't have that. So, but at least every day you
Right.
played. So like, for something that has a drop chance, well, every raid is mutually exclusive, right? And it has the same drop chance. It's not because you did the last raid that you have a better chance of getting it this raid. Whereas with like skill gain mechanics or maybe reputation mechanics in Star Citizen, those, like, to get to the highest level reputation, I think should be an incredibly difficult achievement. But every single time you play the game, you're able to work towards that achievement.
Exactly. It shouldn't be something that's just like this pipe dream of like, you know, you can spend 800 hours and never get it.
Yeah,
or you
that's
can spend
shit.
8 hours
Okay.
and get it randomly. Like that's not good, right? And so a lot of these systems, like in Black Desert, they have systems where you have like someone was talking about time gated stuff and how they don't like time gated stuff in games. And I was explaining to them that time gated stuff works really well in cases that I've seen in tandem with RNG drop rates. And those are usually implemented kind of after the honeymoon phase of like a new item. Say like WoW releases a new raid, for example, right? And there's a new, like, Sylvanas' bow is like in the raid, right? And you know, it has a 5% chance of dropping every time you kill her. But you know, maybe down the line, you know, when the next raid comes out and people still want the bow or whatever, let's just assume that this isn't how WoW works. Let's just assume this is how it works. Let's say down the line, Sylvanas' bow is still useful, but it's old, right? It's still useful, but it's an old raid, old content. Well, now they implement a system where every week when you do the raid, you get a piece of her bow. And if you get 20 pieces of that item, you can get the bow. Is it the strongest bow in the game? No, but now it's achievable. But even though it's relatively dated, it's still useful and powerful. It's not this unobtainable thing that you will never get ever. You know what I mean? And so it allows it, and that's really good for newer players, which are an important player base to MMOs, regardless of what anybody says. Newer players and casual players, it's very important to not have a gap that's so wide as the Grand Canyon that when you play Star Citizen, you've been playing for 5 years, and then your buddy, oh, Mike, that game looks sick, I want to jump in. Well, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do that, you got to level up. Yeah, you got to do that. You can't play with me. Sorry, bro. You got to spend like 5 months in order to get even remotely close to where I'm at. It's like, well, dude, I don't want to do that. Like, I can't play with you. Then he doesn't play.
That's why I don't play New World.
Exactly, right?
Everybody out-leveled me, and then it was over. There was never getting back.
And so a lot of these games have like catch-up mechanics and things like that to allow players to kind of get into it. But that's kind of going off topic. But a point I'm trying to say is, like, I think that systems that have let casual players and newer players catch up in the long term very relatively quickly is good for the overall health of the game. Because I'm telling you right now, I've played a bunch of PvP-centric hardcore games, and those games die, bro. They literally die because nobody new is putting money into the game. Nobody new is playing the game. It's so out of reach. I mean, Street Fighter, again, I play a lot of games. Street Fighter did something very similar. They introduced a modern style mode for their fighting game, because if you wanted to play Street Fighter, you need to know all the inputs, quarter circle forward, dragon punch, this and that, yada, yada. Now they implemented a modern control scheme that lets casual players come in and get into the game and play for fun. And spoiler alert, not every casual player has to verse a hardcore player. You ever thought that maybe people that never would have touched Street Fighter before, now all of a sudden can play it on the couch with their boys who all don't know how to play, right? It's very similar to Star Citizen, in which they can implement these systems that allow that kind of cater to newer and casual players, while also allowing the hardcore players, hardcore quote unquote, say reach these very high goals that require a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of, prepping and this and that, whatever. I think they both work in tandem. And I don't think it's good and healthy for the game to either have one or the other, period.
Okay.
It just can't work.
Yeah.
Right. And so another topic that I wanted to discuss about the hardcore thing was should we lose stuff, right? Because a lot of people like, if you die, should you lose your stuff?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to this one yet. I don't
know either.
They just need to tell us what it's gonna be.
Exactly. That's what I was gonna say, because it's like, again, we don't know the type of game it's gonna be, and I already feel like it's kind of a mixed bag, right? It's kind of a mixed bag because I can't think, unless someone can say it in the chat or you or whatever, I can't think of a MMO that has the traditional MMO style of like progression and like gear and all that stuff, while also when you die you lose that.
But this game doesn't have that, right? Like Star Citizen doesn't have your traditional leveling system. So
is it going to be a DayZ or an Escape from Tarkov? Is that the plan?
It could be more successfully than an MMO that you level and lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't know. How are we gonna know until we fucking do it?
If it's going to be, say it is going to be an Escape from Tarkov, right? Or it is going to be like a DayZ. There was I think we were having a discussion about like skins, right? And like transmogs and stuff like that in Star Citizen. And like, you go on the store and you buy, I don't know, a turquoise, whatever the armor you can get in Grimhex, a really cool one that everyone wears. I forget what it's called. Let's say you can get like some sort of exclusive version of that, right?
Morozov
on the store, right? You're like, oh, cool, I got that. But then you go to Jumptown and you get shot or you get blasted by a railgun, and like, do you lose that? Oh no, it's a subscriber item, so you get it back. But but is that system like, because the skins and the look of the actual item itself is tied to the actual gear itself, it makes it a very muddy thing to, you know what I mean? It's not like like in Halo. Yeah, exactly. So now they're in this position where like, how do you backtrack that? Because in a game like Halo, for example, and Halo Infinite and Halo Collector's Edition, they have skins for your guns and for your all your stuff. And how it works is you go into a match, and when you grab a battle rifle off the ground, it has that skin on it, right?
Yep.
And when someone else picks it up, it has their skin on it, right? It's like an overlay on top. So if they were going to go that route, then that could work, because then you wouldn't necessarily, you would lose the gear, right? But if you got the gear back, you would then have the same skin that you had before. But because they're selling these skins tied to the armor, it's a weird, I don't really know I don't envy them for trying to figure that out.
I think I don't know how long you've been around, but back in the day, they used to sell ship weapons on the store. Mm-hmm. And they decided that they didn't want to do that anymore. And or for whatever, like legal reasons or something, they took it away. They refunded everybody. They let everybody know it was going to happen months before it happened, and then they just did it. And then they did the same fucking thing again. How fucking stupid could you be?
I don't know, but that's what I'm saying. Like, the direction of the game, again, we don't know what's internally, but based off of the history and what we've seen, it only looks like no one really knows what to do, and it's very discouraging, because we all want the game to succeed. We all want it to be great, but damn, man, like, imagine Todd Howard making Starfield, and 10 years in, he's like, oh shit, I don't really know what I don't really know where I'm going with this. It'd be like, everyone's like, what the hell? That'd be weird, right? And with any game, with Red Dead, any game, right? Right?
Yeah.
So another thing, I think the last caller was talking about how mechanics should be hardcore, and like, you should be like a master of whatever. Like, if you want to do this, if you want to mine, it should benefit players who really master that craft or whatever, right? And I agree with that. But I also think that, one, not every single mechanic needs to be in depth, right? I think
look at easy
to yep.
Right, or hull stripping. I think that's great. It's a great little system, but it's so simple.
No. Yeah, I agree. I think I think a easy to learn, hard to master mentality is very good. For a lot of those types of systems. For
Mhm.
example, getting into your ship in this game and flying it around and shooting down some NPCs should be easy. But and I guess my perspective might be kind of skewed because I know how to fly ships in the game. But I think that's relatively easy. You press F, you get in the ship, you turn it on, you can fly around, you press the left button to shoot. It's relatively intuitive. But hey, I'll tell you right now, if I go against Avenger 1 with an arrow in the same loadout, I'm losing 100% of the time because he's mastered what is essentially a very easy thing to initially do, right? And I think I think that's something Star Citizen has done really well. Obviously, gun balance and shield balance, all those issues aside, the actual act of doing those things, again, is very easy to learn, hard to master. And I think that's good. I think that should carry over to a lot of other of mechanics. But how do you do that with something like mining, right? And I'm not a miner, so I don't really know too much about how they could do that in depth, as outside of like knowledge of mining. I think that having the ability
No, because
to
it still is a game. There still is gameplay in mining, right? You have to keep the green zone. You have to keep your thing in the green zone, and they've just gradually fucked it up over the time and muddied it up with all the things that they add on top of it, where you can make a massive green zone or
I saw that
you
it was
know,
just the
stupid
entire
shit.
bar.
Yeah, it's just dumb shit like that is what they took the skill out of it. When mining first came in, you had to react to what was happening,
Mm.
and it was much more, I think, skillful than it is now, and that's fine. So I think what you do is certain more difficult rocks require you to be very attentive, and when it goes up too high, to be able to address it quickly and bring it down, and you know, whatever. But
Right. So if I were to mine and I only knew something as simple as like, what things to put on it, and I went to go mine a rock, you would be better at me at it, even if we have the same loadout. And let's say we have the same exact loadout, we're getting the same exact rock. You would be better at me at it because you have experience doing it. You know kind of how the gauge works,
sure,
how
it's
to
just not
use
a
your okay.
competition is the only difference.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do think that they're not. But if there are mechanics that I think shouldn't have um any sort like that type of like in depth thing, I think the skill and the mastery should come into the knowledge of those things, right?
Yeah.
If we go back to like medical gameplay, for example, the I do think, and again, this is kind of like one of those do my game idea things, but I'm just trying to give an example is like the medical gun, right? You have like the automatic one, you press the auto button, it does what it should do,
That gun
and
is
that's
so
it,
stupid.
right? Right. I do think that for medical gameplay to be more in depth, I think that the medical gun should do whatever arbitrary percentage less of what it does now. But if you are actually skilled and you know the medicines, you know what they do, and you intentionally inject those specific medicines into you, they have 100% of the benefit, right? And not everyone wants to learn that, and that's
The right
fine. But if you
amount
want to
for the
learn
right
that,
injuries or whatever, right?
yeah.
It could get very in depth.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be anything like super crazy. It could just be something super like, well, if you have a leg injury, you need this medicine, and if it's a tier 3, this percent. If it's a tier 2, this is like not crazy, right? But I mean, it could go crazy as well. It's all iterative, right? It can get more in depth or less in depth as the game goes on. But I think that those systems, which are relatively simple on the surface, could have depth with the knowledge of knowing those systems in the first place. I think that'd be good for the game as well in terms of hardcore MMO mechanics. And just one last thing is uh I think that a boring end game, in my opinion, is not always the dev's fault. I think most of the time it is, but I don't think it's always the dev's fault. And I say that because I've seen plenty of MMOs that have on launch, Star Citizen may be different, when we're 55 years old and it comes
On
out.
launch, lol.
But But I've seen plenty of MMOs and plenty of games that new players get into it and they get discouraged because they see the end game and they think to themselves, like, oh, that's it. Like that's what like, okay, so I get into WoW. What's your goal in World of Warcraft? What's your goal in Black Desert? What's your goal in all these MMOs? Most of the time it's to get the highest gear, kill the boss the fastest you can. And that's kind of it, right? There's the journey to that path is either fun or not fun to you or whatever, but that's kind of your end game. And a lot of players, they see that end game and think, so, well, that's it. Well, that seems kind of boring. But to be fair, that's kind of the MMO kind of experience. Like that's kind of like the end game is what you make of it. And I think that if you have a very good designed game, you can mitigate that feeling by having different types of end games. For example, Black Desert, again, I'm going to bring this up. The end game is gear, right? More or less the end game is gear.
Sure.
But how you get there and what your end game is to get there is very different. If you want to get max gear in Black Desert, sure, you can grind a bunch of mobs and that's the standard thing. But you can also, I don't know, life skill. You can literally go hunting, go fishing, go, and all these systems have a depth in them. They're not just like press a button, press E, and then you fish. They have like whole progression systems. You can level up your fishing rod. So with Star Citizen, it can be the same thing, right? Where it's like my end game is I want to be the best cargo hauler ever, right? And not necessarily and have the best industrial drive and have the ship with the biggest cargo.
What does that mean? That's, I think, the problem. Well, okay, what is being the best cargo hauler ever? What's the best miner ever? If there's no, I think the only way to do it, because here's what I'm confused by what you're saying and why I tried to cut you off there is the idea of I'm going to be the best this. Well, okay, it's easy to tell who the best PvPer is because there might be a leaderboard, or it's easy to tell who the best guild is because they might have control over the most desired things, right?
Okay.
So for me, I don't think that there is a way for like mining or these to be considered the best. Maybe there's just reputation gaining and you hit I want to be a level 5 miner or whatever. I want to have the max reputation with the mining guild. But how do you become the best? Like there's competitive skills or competitive gameplay, and then there's non-competitive gameplay. Being the best to me means that there's some sort of competition there. Is that what you mean, or kind of what were you going on with this?
I think there can be both. I think you're right. I think when you're the best PvP or the best pilot, it's very obvious because you beat people up all the time.
Yeah.
But if you're the best cargo hauler, that doesn't necessarily mean you're better than someone else at cargo hauling. It could be that game's progression path to quote unquote the best, right? Like when I say the best
for you, okay.
right? Yeah, like when I say the best, that means let's say you've gotten in quotations the best ship in Star Citizen for cargo hauling, right? Like that's like the end game for that, right? And I guess it comes down to you.
For end game.
Right, and that's the thing. Like if you like when the Pioneer comes out, KEKW, when the Pioneer comes out and people have already bought it and they have it, doesn't that kind of tie into progression in a way? So like now, like if you were to, I don't know, if the game goes the way that in our heads we say it's gonna go, where you find like a silver cave or you find a vein or something like that, and you want to set up base and everything, Joe is flying around in this Titan. He's like, oh shit, I found a cave with a bunch of gold in it. That's cool. I want to set up a base here. Let me get a Pioneer. And fucking Billy with $8 million and 3 890 jumps and 15 Krakens and 15 Pioneers. Like, fuck out the way, Joe. I got 2 Pioneers set up. I got a base loaded up. It's ready to go. Like I'm already set. Like I sucked. And it'd be different if it wasn't part of the progression of the game, but unfortunately that is, because again, that can lead to games.
Were you here at the beginning when the caller was like, the difference between that progression is you can participate in that with the way that ship works. You just don't own it. You could participate at that base in the way it works, but you just don't own it.
So
I like that aspect of it is that, yeah, somebody else achieved it, but you're able to play with them because it's not just, okay, you need to be level 5 cargo hauling in order to do any of this stuff. You don't have to be. You could do any of it instantly. You just may not be the person who spawned the ship.
Wait, so if random person A has a pioneer and puts it down for whatever reason.
Well, do you really think a pioneer is going to be a solo ship? Do you think the base is going to be run by a singular person? Maybe, maybe not. That's what I'm putting out there. Is most likely not. Maybe a small base sure would be one person, but
I mean, even if it's not right, it could be one person. It could be 10 people. I mean, this is use a group an example, right? 'Cause, when you buy a ship, it's on your account, right? But you share that ship with your crew. So if crew A has a whale and crew 2 doesn't, and crew A goes in and takes over, can crew B and crew B saw it first? You know what I mean? Like, how does that work?
I don't know. I mean, that's like the obvious. Okay, there's a Zerg problem in an MMO, which is surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Is kind of how I see it. I mean, obviously they could have, or you mean they find the better location and they do it first?
Yeah, like I said, if crew B finds this thing and it's valuable, they didn't pay for a pioneer to set up base to have everything.
It's shit. But that's already happened. So what are they going to do to? They already sold the ships. So what are they going to do to resolve that problem? I don't know.
Yeah, I just brought that up because I think it ties into again with the mechanics of what this MMO is supposed to be. Because I think that's a mechanic that unfortunately is flawed because of being able to buy the ships that are tied to potential progression in the game, right?
Yeah. But it sucks. Are you depressed now too?
I've been depressed again. Like I want the game to succeed so bad. I'm frustrated because I know that the devs work their asses off every single day to make this game as best as they can. And unfortunately for us as people who are on the sidelines and who back the game, we just don't. Right now, anyways, at this point in time of speaking, I don't see where it's going. I don't see it. I don't. There's like it's weird. It's weird. They have like some systems that can work for this type of game, but then some systems that can work for this type of game. I'm just like, I don't know.
And then they go to actually make the system, and then they realize it doesn't work. That's the best.
Yeah, someone in chat said I do play other games, so I'm not as depressed. I play a ton of games, so I'm chilling.
Nice.
I know it's not easy for you.
Don't listen to chat. I'm literally like one of them was like
I've
judging
been there before, trust me.
One of them's judging you, and of all people, it's the one guy who has no right to judge anybody out of every single person in this chat. So, fuck, man.
Trust me, it bounces off. It's all good. Appreciate it.
All right, Primal. I'll let you go though, dude.
All right, man. Thank you, and good luck with everything. You've been doing good so far, man.
So far.
I mean, I don't tell you that. You're doing what you're doing.
So far. But trying to stay alive, trying to keep it up is becoming more difficult. All right, Prime. We'll let you go, bro. Thanks for the call.
Yep, take it easy.
Later, man.
Yep.
All right. So, what have we learned this week? That Star Citizen sucks at communicating. What's new? But yeah, it's just how will this all work? Nobody knows. And I think the only way to communicate it is for CIG to just do a CitizenCon one day and just like, if it's a CitizenCon, a Pillar Talk, an ISC, whatever it needs to be, and just lay it all out. These are your mechanics. This is how housing will work. This is how looting will work. This is how ship combat will work. This is how ownership will work of things, and they don't. They just don't. It's always we're thinking about it. We're having discussions with it, and it's like, and I'm fucking so tired of discussions. What's it gonna be? You know, like, can hardcore MMO mechanics even be applied to Star Citizen? Well, we had a lot of differing points of views today. I thought it was a really good show, and I appreciate everyone that called for sharing their opinions. And in the end, none of us are wrong and none of us are right in a lot of ways, because who the fuck knows? Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment your also pointless thoughts, because who knows? But in the end, maybe that thought gets a point across to somebody somewhere at some point.